if you're living in Barbados, you probably heard of the COVID cluster, so-called COVID cluster in Speightstown with the church. And I mean, when you've operated in the chaos for so long, it starts to become normal. And when you've operated in this slavery for so long, it starts to become normal. And it just took a year for us to get, for most people to get acclimated to masks and social distancing and curfews and lockdowns and contact tracing. And I don't want people to be comfortable with this. I don't want people to get used to contact tracing and all this other stuff. Not just contact tracing, but masks and lockdowns. And we gotta keep reminding ourselves, and it's hard, but we gotta keep reminding ourselves every day that this is not normal. Wearing a mask on my face, it's not normal. Putting a mask on my children's faces, it's not normal. Being forced to take a vaccine, it was normal, especially in Caribbean society, because we got vaccinated at school when we were at school, or some of our parents didn't even know we got vaccinated. So, but that still ain't normal. And contact tracing of church members, no, just because they went to church. I mean, they've crossed the line, and they keep crossing, and it's getting worse. So here we see in this article, contacts of the Speightstown Church COVID-19 cluster being called. Health officials, including the chief medical officer, wants persons who may have come into contact with anyone associated with the COVID-19 cluster linked to a church in Speightstown, St. Peter, to present themselves for testing. So just because they've been in contact with someone who just tested positive, we know, if you watched my last video, even if you didn't, most of us, if you're here watching this, you know that the PCR test is total bullshit. It's not a diagnostic test. It just tests for virus particles, DNA and RNA, and can't tell if the virus is live or not. It's a useless test. It's meaningless. They can crank up the cycles to how many they want, and get as much positive tests as they want. Just because you test positive from that bogus test, they can know, get all your information and see who you've been in contact with. And I mean, is this really what we should be doing? They're crashing the economy, and they're going after people who've been to church and enjoying themselves. And This is insane. Dr. Kim George said that this appeal is out of an abundance of caution and is coupled with the fact that the Ministry of Health and Wellness is already in the progress of carrying out the necessary contact tracing to identify primary contacts as well. I mean, isn't it so ironic that this is called the Ministry of Health and Wellness and they're doing the exact opposite of what their name suggests? I mean, that's the thing with government in a nutshell. When they like in America, the Patriot Act has nothing to do with patriotism. It's just more surveillance, and it's like they're taking the blueprint of 1984, where you had the Ministry of Love, you know, who were the most brutal people, and the Ministry of Truth, which told lies. I mean, all we have to do is all we have to do is realize that whatever their name is, it's the opposite. They do the exact opposite. So the Ministry of Health and Wellness is doing the exact opposite of what their name suggests. Dr. George is urging members of the public to cooperate with the ministry in an effort to contain any further spread of the virus linked to this cluster. The public is reminded that a primary contact is someone who has come into close contact with a person or persons confirmed by a bogus test positive. COVID-19 is not shown to exist, so you just test positive for whatever, and no, you can be contact traced. Anyone who suspects that they have been exposed should go to one of the designated testing centers, Brantford Tate Polyclinic in Blackrock, whatever. So this is what they want us to do. They want us now to get tested of our own fruition. And going to get tested that is giving your consent for them to continue to control you. Going to get tested, wearing a mask, taking the vaccine, social distancing, that's all giving your consent to be controlled and manipulated. And they want us now, the people, to go of our own fruition and go and get tested so they can then control us. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Health Minister, to those hiding, come forward for COVID testing. No, they're treating these people, the people from the church, like criminals because they don't want to get tested. I mean, why would you go and get tested for no reason? Another special appeal is being made for those individuals related to the Northern Church cluster who have not yet been contacted by health officials to present themselves. Oh, we're being summoned. We're being summoned by the authorities for testing, as few others have already. Of the 12 positive cases reported today, 9 were related either directly or indirectly to the identified Speightstown St. Peter located cluster. So they're trying to deter people. This is all psychological warfare, as I stated. They want to deter people from going to church. This is going to deter people from going to church because they don't want to get hassled. They don't want to get tested and have to wear a mask and social distance just to go to church. And then because somebody tested positive, all of us have to get hassled. Like, this Peter Piff for Paul Fiff for all thing is just going out of control. They want to deter people from gathering. They want to break us down spiritually, psychologically, physically, mentally. All of this is to break down the human psyche and make us more malleable to then control us further. And I hope people don't get downhearted and still go to church. I'm not a church guy, but I believe in freedom. And I think people have the freedom to go to church when they want. Go to church and sing and praise God and, get that energy. And they're just draining that spiritual energy from us every day with all this propaganda and brainwashing and fear mongering. And they're targeting the religious groups and religious people, spiritual people, because when we realize, because religious people and even non-religious people, just spiritual people in general, realize that there is something bigger out there and that this COVID-19 narrative is nothing compared to what's out there and the whole big picture, and that we don't have to fear, because that what spirituality and religion is showing us. We don't have to fear these earthly things, and we don't have to fear man. But they want to change that. They want to take away that relationship with God and with spirituality and with the self. They want to take away that relationship. That's why they genetically modify all our foods and poison our water and all this stuff. Is just to break us down, not only physically but spiritually and mentally. And this is all just mental games to try to deter religious people from interacting and getting together and singing and being joyful and praising God. And if people realize it, I know they're going to start to fight back. But if they're beaten down by all this fear of the invisible virus and all the analogies, we got to fight this war against COVID-19, it's all trying to manipulate us. 2 families comprising 4 and 3 members respectively were directly connected, while a family of 2 was indirectly connected. Although these stats are low, my concern and the concern of the ministry is that the fact that they are all related to the church cluster. See, they're trying to demonize the church now, so that people don't gather together and when they gather together, that they don't talk about what's going on and all the draconian and authoritarian measures that are being carried out. They want to keep us separated, because if we're separated, then we can't communicate. And if we can't communicate, then we're not going to fight back. Because we're going to think that it's only me that, you're going to think that it's only you that believe that this is wrong, and, you're going to feel alone and isolated. His appeal comes on the top of the chief medical officer pleading for this the same set of contacts to come forward now before too late. See, they're urging us because we have the power. We don't have to go and get tested and have something shoved up our noses, and which can cause infection, which can damage the olfactory nerves and the sinus. These swabs have dangerous chemicals on them. Ethylene oxide, which is a known carcinogen, known to cause cancer. I mean, they're killing us in every way. Whatever they say is supposed to help us is actually doing the opposite. The cluster was presently occupying the attention of the health minister more than anything else, and Mr. Bostic made an appeal for the assistance of Barbadians as it continued its contact tracing efforts. I mean, contact tracing is just a fancy way to say it, but just call it what it is. Just call it surveillance. Just call it that. Just call it surveillance. We have always stated that the ministry, in spite of all of its efforts, in spite of all the technical expertise, sure, you call what you have technical expertise, experience. I mean, that's not technical expertise. Just following a dogma of science is not technical expertise. That's orthodoxy. That's just following orders. We would like people in governments and authorities to actually think for themselves. They're not going to do that because they have agendas backing them up. They have shareholders and funding. It's just a whole big corporation. It's just a whole big corporation. Just because they call it government doesn't mean it's not a corporation. Doesn't mean that they don't have stakeholders and shareholders and funding from people who were known eugenicists. I mean, is this really what they should be doing? I mean, I'm sure there are more important matters at hand, but maybe not. Maybe they just sit around in their offices and just try to figure out what else can they do to break us down. But know that there's a way. Just stand up. Just say no. Just fight back. Look at this article. Hundreds of Canadian Christians gathered on Sunday at the Grace Life Church in Edmonton, Alberta. Government officials shut down the church for allegedly violating public COVID-19 health orders. Authorities erected a chain-link fence to prevent the house of worship from reopening last week. Unsafe worshippers tore down the barrier, but were quickly met by a large contingent of riot police. This is in Canada. And just because they didn't follow these bogus COVID-19 health measures, the police put up a fence around their church. I mean, they're doing the same thing all over the world. They may be doing it in different ways, but they're still targeting the church, and they're still targeting religion. They're still demonizing it. They're just doing it in lesser degrees and greater degrees, and this is just one of the more authoritarian degrees. They put up a fence around the church, man. I mean, you would think that we are living in the Twilight Zone, or in a Black Mirror episode or something, because this thing is getting crazy, man. But the Christians fought back. They tore that thing down because they don't fear these people. The only thing they fear is God, and they don't want us to have that. They don't want us to, realize that we shouldn't be fearing these people. We shouldn't be afraid of getting arrested and and being roughed up by police and all this stuff. We shouldn't fear all that nonsense because they answer to a higher power. Christian or not, we all realize that something out there. Or maybe you're an atheist, but you still have your own principles and your own values. And if you're spiritual and religious, you know that there's something higher out there, and there's no need to fear these people. And they don't like that. Alberta Health Services physically closed the Grace Life Church, preventing access to the building. Alberta Health Services said the church would remain closed until the Grace Life Church can demonstrate the ability to comply with Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health restrictions. I mean, they're treating us like children. I mean, this is something you would do to your child. You would put him in the corner, or something the teacher would do, put you in the corner to sit down or stand up and make you face the corner until you can realize the errors of your ways and all this. We're not children. We're grown adults. We can assess the risks, of which there are risks in everything, and you can't take away all risks. Because then what life would that be? These are the videos here. I'll put this in the description so you could watch them yourself. Approximately 400 people gathered outside the church on Sunday, according to the Edmonton Journal. Christians were not able to get inside the church, so they sang hymns and listened to the Bible readings outside the building. And this is what we need to do here. This should be an example, another good example to follow. There's nothing wrong with following. Nothing wrong with following. But most of the people today are following the wrong shepherd. They're following the wrong shepherd. They're following masks and forced vaccinations and lockdowns and closing small businesses and curfews and all this nonsense. We've got to stop following that. Follow the example of these people in Canada and the people in St. Vincent and the people all around the world who are fighting back. The Alberta Health Services claimed it had received 105 complaints from the public about the Grace Life Church between July 10th and April 6th. The church was... See, they want people to rat on their own neighbors. I mean, they're getting complaints from neighbors, and they want the public to police itself, just like in Nazi Germany. People were selling out their neighbors, and they're using that. They're turning that now, and they're using it again. You've got to realize that. The church was shut down in January for breaching public health guidelines that limit workshop services to 15% capacity. The church was also accused of not ensuring that people wore face masks during religious services and for not practicing proper physical distancing. These these people are heroes, man. Coming to the church, you don't have to wear masks, you don't have to social distance. That is all bullshit. These people are real Christians. These people know, they read their Bible. They know all the past events and all the other stuff in the Bible that teaches them about the one world government and the mark of the beast and all this other stuff. So they're hip to this stuff. But then you have some other churches and some other Christians over there that claim to be Christians and claim to be religious, and they're getting injected with the aborted fetal cells, and they're wearing the masks, and they're closing their churches down, and they're telling their congregation to go get the vaccine. And I mean, if you're a Christian, you would not want to go to that church. You would rather go to this church that is all about freedom. And religion is all about freedom. I think people have forgotten that. People have forgotten a lot of things from the start of 2020. They've forgotten a lot of things, man. In February, Grace Life's pastor James Coate was charged violating COVID-19 public health orders. Coate spent 35 days in custody before pleading guilty to a charge of breaching bail and was fined $1,500. He returned to the pulpit on March 28th, so this guy was thrown in jail. Couldn't stop my man. Couldn't stop my guy. People need to see this. If he can do it, we can do it as well. Coate's attorney John Carpe said the government's enforcement was excessive. You think? I'm very disappointed to see this kind of draconian and aggressive enforcement of health orders when these health orders themselves are being challenged in court. It shows a very aggressive government that is not answering questions about its policies, but wants to push its way around and try to make an example of Grace Life Church. And that's the same thing they're doing here in Barbados with the Speightstown Church. They're trying to make an example of it. They want to deter people from going. And we're a so-called Christian nation. But I think that's all pretend. All that is just pretend. All that's theater. WWE stuff.
We are following some breaking news this morning just west of the city.
RCMP are on scene and crews are putting fences up around Grace Life Church. Our Kim Smith joins us live now with the latest.
Yeah, hi, Aaron and Vinesh. I'm here outside Grace Life Church. AHS is confirming that it has blocked access to the church by putting fencing around. RCMP are also on scene here, providing support to AHS workers. Now that we know that there are supporters on scene here from Grace Life Church. More and more cars are showing up, parking along the strip. Grace Life Church and parishioners have defied health orders for months now by not wearing masks, not distancing. Our global news cameras have seen people hugging outside of the church. We also know that Pastor James Coates of Grace Life Church has spent time behind bars as well recently. So again, we'll be following this story throughout the day, finding out exactly what is going to happen here as supporters continue to show up. Aaron and Vinesh.
Yes, it should be interesting to see how this all unfolds. Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you.
Keep it calm. Yeah.